Welcome to this very special edition of The Author's Voice with KAJ, a show where we explore the stories behind the stories. Here we dive into the worlds created by authors, discover their inspirations, and ensure that you walk away enriched and inspired. And today we have with us author Autumn Williams, and we'll talk about her Clouds on the Ground. This is her first full-length poetry collection following her chapbook, Waves. Welcome to the show, Autumn.
Thank you. It's great to talk to you again. I really appreciate it. I'm excited to be
You're
here.
welcome to the show. Welcome to this show now, The Author's Voice with KJ, and we'll try and understand. We'll come to the book, your full-length poetry collection, and then we'll the Clouds on the Ground. But before that, let's understand a bit about you for the audience itself. What got you into writing in the first place, especially such great poetry?
Thank you. I have a chronic illness, ME/CFS, and I've had it for 11 years now. For a long time, I was more functional, and then at a certain point, I became bedbound. That was really hard. And after a year of being bedbound and just going on this journey of acceptance, I started writing poetry just as a way of dealing with my emotions and also as an escape and sort of a therapy, I guess. And that was in 2022, and I haven't stopped writing poetry since. I published 2 books, and I'm not as sick as I was. I still pretty sick, still often bedbound, but I'm not as bad as I was when I first became bedbound. So I'm able to do more than I was at that time. But just the illness is what triggered it, and also the illness triggered the writing of the poetry, but my desire to help people is what triggered, hey, I could publish this book and hopefully it can help other people.
Absolutely. So first, Waves, you wrote this chapbook, Waves.
Yeah, so Waves and Clouds on the Ground were technically being written at the same time. But I published Waves first, and that is free. You can sign up on my website if anyone's interested. It's a shorter poetry book, and it's an ebook, and it's free for anyone who signs up for my newsletter. And that is Waves. It's a short read. It's about the ocean. It's ocean poetry, but about love and loss and longing.
Absolutely. And then you came down to writing Clouds on the Ground. That's the one we are talking about today.
Yeah. So Clouds on the Ground is my full-length collection, and it's on poems on times, loss, and dreams. But there's a lot of themes throughout it. It's a lot of nature poetry. And another thing about my poetry is that I write it as fiction. So the idea is the inspiration is chronic illness, but I write it to be universal. So anyone can read it and hopefully put themselves into the poems and see their experiences, whatever they may be. And so that's Clouds on the Ground. And it's got a lot of themes. There's also like love and longing. There's some determination in there. There's I wrote it to make it flow through the seasons, but I don't know, it encapsulates this idea of we go through hard things in life, but trying to see the beauty in the world, stay determined, but also not hide from the hard things. I feel like there's a theme sometimes in the world where people just want you to get over it and move on. And with chronic illness, it's like, well, there's no cure. You're going to be sick, maybe your whole life, often. And so I put into my book, while there is still hope in it, there's also this idea of sitting with people in their pain and just validating, like, hey, this is hard, what you're going through, and maybe there's not an immediate solution. Maybe it's just learning to live in this new reality and still finding hope and goodness.
Absolutely. So, Autumn, it is, not so easy to write poetry. You can write one poem, you can write another poem, But to get to continuously writing poetry, and then to get into a collection of poems, and then get into a book like this, Clouds on the Ground, is not a. How did you cover each part of it? It needs a lot of covering of mental distance into this whole process. Share us a bit. Means, where did you get this strength from? This is not an easy thing to do when you are fighting a difficult illness, and then you have to be creative, and then you have to look at the things outside the creative part of it. Share us a bit about this for the audience.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks. It took a long time, a very long time. So it was, years writing the poems. And then I took quite a long time learning book marketing. In the beginning, I didn't know what I was doing. So I was just researching, and I realized I could self-publish and just how to do that. It's like, how do you put the book together? How do you sell the book? How do you get people to know about it? But as far as the book itself and putting the poems together, I would go through phases of writing certain poems. And then with the book, I wanted to make it flow. So I had this big whiteboard, and I had all the poems on little cards. And then I just put them on this whiteboard, and I would just rearrange them. And it took me, I don't know, so many hours, so many days of rearranging them and putting them in this order so that they flowed. So that way there wasn't too many dream poems next to each other, and there wasn't too many time poems next to each other. And just the nature flowed throughout. So, here we're at the ocean and here we're at the desert. And then I arranged it to be by season. I arranged it to start and end with fall because I wanted to give it this feeling that people, not only with chronic illness, have, but I feel like, when you're going through hard things in life, is the idea of time going by fast, but then also slow. So to start and end with the seasons, it gives that feeling. It's like just keeps going. It's continuous. Just it's like, oh, I was just here, but also, it seems like it's so slow sometimes, especially when it's hard. But then you blink and so much time has gone by and you have no idea how that happened because it felt like eternity. And so I arranged it by season. So fall, and then winter, spring, summer, fall again. And I really wanted to link the poems together and just give it this continuous feel. So each poem was very, very carefully thought about with how it flowed with the poems around it. Um, and yeah, I just, being sick, everything takes a lot of time. So I just took so much time before I was able to get the book out. It was a lot of work. Not to be cliche, but it was a labor of love. Um, so that's part of the story of how I got it out there.
Absolutely, absolutely. Uh, so, Clouds on the Ground. What's the story behind this? Means what? The name is very good, but for the audience, how should they understand what you mean by clouds on the clouds are up there? What about the ground?
Right. Well, obviously, it's very symbolic, very poetic. Um, Poetry, you can do things like that. But there is a story that it came from is when I was really sick, before I was writing poetry, after I became bedbound, I would do like I would get into what's called post-exertional malaise, PEM, and I couldn't move. I could barely think. And so I'd be laying there, and this one time I was trying to fall asleep, and I felt so sick, and I couldn't walk, and it was bad. And I was trying to imagine, like, do some mental imagery to fall asleep, and I still do, like, imagine flying to clouds. And I couldn't do it. Like, my body was just shutting down, and it wouldn't even let me imagine motion. So the idea, it just popped into my head to imagine the clouds resting on the ground. So I could just imagine that I was just laying there on the ground surrounded by clouds. And it went really well, but I relaxed and fell asleep. And when I was writing the book, that title, Clouds on the Ground, it came to me. And, I wrote a poem titled Clouds on the Ground. It's in the book. But it represents a lot of things. That's the story where it came from. But um, To me, it's just this hope. And I really believe that there's something beautiful coming for all of us, and it might not be in this lifetime. So clouds on the ground is kind of this hope that that beautiful thing is coming in this life. But maybe it's in the sky. Maybe the clouds will be in the sky when we find or something beautiful. Like there's a lot of things that we have to wait for, especially with chronic illness. You know, you never know if you're going to find healing in this life or the next. So clouds on the ground is just a hope for, you know, those good things and when they'll come.
Absolutely. So, clouds on the ground. Uh, which was the most challenging part of writing this book or getting this book to fruition? To this stage. About writing part, that itself needs a lot of creativity, or or getting it towards a book itself, or other things. How would you like to put it if someone wants to know the most challenging part that this book took?
The most challenging part for me was sharing it. I Whenever I went to go put it online, because right now poetry is really big on social media, and I wanted to build an audience before I published the book, so someone would be there to buy it. I released my poems before I published, and that was terrifying to share it and put it online and be like, "Here's a poem. Here's another poem." I It's a strange fear because it's very intense, but it's not like the fear of, oh my gosh, I might die, but you know, your body, your like protective instincts is saying, oh, you're mine, and you're like, no, it's okay. It's okay. You don't like it. You just gotta put it out there. But it was very scary. That was the hardest part, was the initial sharing of my poems before I published the book. Luckily, you know, people were kind and I found people who liked it. That's something I had been learning is marketing and trying to find your audience, find the people who will like your stuff because not everyone will. Um, and so still a little scary sometimes, but not as bad as it was before I, you know, posted that first poem.
Absolutely, it happens. Initially, you are a bit, reluctant to just don't know how it will be received, and then you find that it's very well received. Good reviews. I see it. I saw some of the poems you put out on Instagram, and I can definitely feel that it's not because they just, they are just being kind, but they really like it. You can make it from how it is being received. And if I understand, some good reviews also have got for this particular book,
Yeah,
Kirkus and all.
yeah, I've been getting good reviews. And thank you for your kind words. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely. And what about the? If I remember, there was this Kirkus review also praising your. How did that happen? When was that? Was it for also Clouds on the Ground?
Hmm. Yeah, with Kirkus, you know, if you're self-published, you can pay them to review your book, but it's kind of scary because you don't know what they're going to say. They can be brutal and they're going to be honest. They don't like your book, they're going to say it in a review. Luckily, if you're self-published and paying them, if they give you a negative review, you can tell them don't publish it. So I took a risk. I thought, you know, this will give me some constructive criticism. I can get a good idea of how it will be received based on this review. And it came back positive, and I was stunned. And it's been very helpful to have that. You know, I put it on the back of the book, and Kirkus is very well known, and people take it seriously. If you are traditionally published, and you know, they just put those up there. You don't pay for it, and if it's negative, it's up there. So, um, it's I don't know. I still have a hard time like it's strange. I have a hard time accepting that people like my poetry. It's like I like it because I wrote it that way. I still feel a little unsure, but you know, Kirkus says it was good, and you know, I don't want to be like, oh, it's not good enough, because then it feels like I'm insulting people who like it, and that's not what I'm doing. I feel insecure myself even now. Um, the Kirkus review, I felt like that helped me, you know, with that fear of sharing my work. Like, okay, I'm doing this positive review. I can share these poems.
Absolutely. Who is this poetry collection for? Any particular group, or is it for everyone?
Yeah, definitely people who like poetry. And I know not everyone does. I hope that people who aren't that into poetry would like it as well. I did write it to be accessible. So um, they're shorter poems, simpler. And I did that, one, because of my own brain fog, but also just this idea that hopefully people with chronic illness would be reading my book, and that can be hard to read when you have a chronic illness a lot of the time with brain fog and everything. Um, but a lot of people who are into poetry have been following my stuff and leaving me good reviews and positive feedback. And I've been, doing these different collaborations with people on Instagram and stuff. Um, I wrote it so it would be not about chronic illness. If you have a chronic illness, you can read it and you can see, oh yeah, I can see how that could be about chronic illness. But it's fiction, so it can be about other things too. So, if you've lost a loved one, or, if you're having a hard time with your dreams and you don't know where they're going, or things seem out of reach, it's hopefully comforting for people going through other hard times, whatever they may be. I tried to write it in a way that it was universal.
Absolutely. Any particular poem, favorite poem of yours? Anything from this particular book of yours, Otto?
Yeah. Do you want me to talk about it or read it or both?
Yes, yes. You can, if you talk about it, you can read it.
Okay.
Talk. Yeah, you are free.
Yeah. Yeah. So I've got my book right here.
Wonderful.
There too. It's simple. Um, yeah. So the last time I talked with you, I shared my very favorite poem. This one I like a lot. And it I recently did a collaboration with someone on Instagram, and she read it. She's really a good orator, and she did a brilliant job. So I'll read it. It won't be as good as how she read it, but I'll read it first, then I'll talk about it. This one's untitled. Some of them, my poems are titled, and others aren't. I only title them if it feels like it adds to the poem. The ticking of a clock disappears when I sleep. My dreams become rest and color. I can fly higher if I try. Heaviness wakes me, but I keep my eyes closed. I hold silence and flight as long as I can. So this one is about dreaming. It's one of the main themes of my book. I talk about actual dreaming, or, looking towards the future, or even daydreaming. But this one's about dreaming, and I will sometimes have flying dreams, which are my favorite, so it's in the poem. Um, and just the idea of how life kind of slips away when you fall asleep. So, like, you can hear things and then you don't hear them anymore. That's the ticking of the clock going away. And then the dreams becoming rest and color and flying. It's like escaping into a different world, and it can be very therapeutic. And then just the waking up, and you have a good dream and you keep your eyes closed and you try and stay there in this beautiful place. And the whole poem is an analogy. I mean, it's literal things that happen to me. Obviously, we all dream, but these flying dreams that I have, and this idea of, yeah, I'll keep my eyes closed and I'll try and sleep back a little bit. But the idea is just sometimes life is really hard and we need to escape into a daydream and find something beautiful. And that can be really helpful, to have that relief from whatever hard thing is going on. Um, and I find it's a good thing. And sometimes, in our world, we're so distracted by technology, and that could be, going online and scrolling through things, that can be a good help as well. But there's something about just creating a different world in your head that can be really good, and it can be something to hold on to. It's something like, hey, this part of my life is really good, and it carries into your life. So the hard things, it can help you be more resilient as you're dealing with whatever you're dealing with.
Absolutely. So, any key message, anything that you want your readers to take away? What's the biggest thing that you want your readers to take away from your book?
I just want people to feel that they are seen and heard, and to know that it's okay to feel sad. It's okay to be devastated. It's okay to go through a hard time, and to just to know that not everyone, they don't have to just, get over it. To know that it's recognized, and especially with chronic illness, it's like, yeah, you're not getting better. You might find some healing, but it's a lifetime thing. Or, when you lose a loved one, that's you're not going to see him till heaven. And so I just want them to feel, validated, and not have someone say, "Oh, well, it's for the best. Move on." To just be like, "No, this is hard. You need to process it, and it's okay. It's okay if you're having a hard time."
How do you want the world to know Autumn Williams as a poet, as a person who is, passing through her own challenges but writing great poems? Have you ever thought about it?
How do I want them to know who I am?
Yes.
Huh. Okay. Um, I don't know. That's such an interesting question. I guess I want people to know that I want to help. That's always been a part of me. Um, I don't know. Um, I mean, I have 6 kids. My husband and I have 6 kids, and I'm really trying to raise them to be a positive force for good in this world, and to teach them to just be loving and kind and accepting of everyone. Um, and I guess I would want the world to understand that I want us to be kind to each other. I want us to stop negatively judging each other, and whatever our differences are. I feel like this world is kind of hard right now. It's really hard right now, and I just, I will get into things. I don't call them. I don't say I'm into politics, even though I am. I say I'm into humanitarian issues, and it's that determination. It's in my poetry, not outright, but other places, not in my poetry directly, but um, I do want people to understand that about me, is that I want, equality and fairness for other people, and I want to, I'll stand up for what's right. Um, I will, and I want that in the world. Um, and so part of, trying to help people feel seen and heard in their hard times is a way of, just we're all d- telling the world we're all human, we're all of value. We don't have to do anything. Just because we exist, we have value. Um, and because we all have value, we need to look out for each other and help each other and try and make the world a better place. So that's something about me that I think would be good for people to know.
Absolutely, absolutely. So, 2 books. What about any more books on the in the pipeline?
Yeah, I'm working on my third one right now. So probably 2026, I'll release it.
Absolutely, absolutely. One last question is: people can find motivation, inspiration from your books. Where do you find motivation, inspiration from? Your own books, other books, or through yourself?
Yeah, that's interesting. The thought of finding inspiration through your own books. Definitely similar themes as I keep writing crop up, and it's usually the same themes over and over. So I guess there's some inspiration through my own books, but definitely through other people's poetry. It's very inspiring to see how people handle the same subjects, how they write differently, how sometimes they write similarly. Um, Inspiration comes from everywhere, really. I'm writing about life. I get inspiration in nature, um, talking with people, reading different books, reading other poems, um, inspiration, just thinking about heaven and things like that. There's inspiration everywhere. I mean, good things, bad things, things in the middle. I think I draw inspiration all from everywhere. It's just there.
Absolutely. There's so much to learn from you, Autumn, from your books, from your life, from you. And I'm sure a lot of people, poetry lovers, a lot of other people would want to connect with you, connect with your poetry. What's the best way for them to do?
Yeah, autumnwilliams.com has information about my books. You can sign up for my newsletter if you're interested. It has links to where I am on social media, where I share my poetry. I don't share all of my poems online. A lot of them are just in the book, but there's a lot that I just share for free, on Instagram or TikTok. And so my website is a good place to go.
Absolutely. With this, it's a wrap on this very special edition of The Author's Voice with KJ. For the audience, if you enjoyed this conversation, do grab a copy of Autumn's book and explore more. And don't forget to subscribe, share, and spread the love for great stories. Until next time, thank you so much for being part of the journey. Thank you so much indeed, Autumn, for joining us.
Thank you.